Have you ever looked at a perfectly painted picture and felt that something was just a little bit wrong? Maybe the colors were too bright or the smiles looked a little too stiff. You want to believe the picture is real because it looks so nice. We all love a good fairy tale. We love stories about princesses and castles and happy endings. It makes us feel good to think that life can be perfect. But deep down, we know that real life is messy. Real life has bumps and mistakes. So when a story looks absolutely perfect, with no mistakes at all, that is when you should start looking closer. That is when you should start asking questions. Samantha Markle has never told me a lie, not even once. Every single thing that she has ever said about you or about Meghan has turned out to be the absolute truth. We checked the facts, we looked at the proof. Before this story gets to the parts about fathers and official papers and hospitals and changed dates, we have to start at the beginning. It all starts with one woman. Her name is Samantha Markle. For a very long time, people did not listen to her. They pushed her away. They ignored her words. People tried to make her look like a jealous sister. They said she just wanted attention. They said she was trying to get famous. But that was not true. Samantha was not chasing attention. She was chasing the truth. She was looking for accuracy. Samantha was the very first person to stand up and say, "Wait a minute, something is not right about Meghan's age." There are always rumors on the internet, and usually you cannot trust them. But Samantha was different. She was not just guessing. She was giving a warning with the kind of sureness that only a sister can have. She did not yell or scream. She did not make wild guesses. She simply told us facts. She gave us dates. She shared memories and family moments that really happened. These were real moments that could not be twisted or changed just to look good for the TV cameras. She was the one who pointed her finger right at the timeline of events and said, "Look closer. None of this makes sense." For years, nobody wanted to hear her voice. But now everything she said is coming back up. Piece by piece, the truth is coming out. It matches the evidence that the world was never supposed to see. And then Thomas Markle, her own father, stepped forward. He confirmed it. He said that every detail Samantha shared was true. That is when the ground beneath Meghan's carefully protected image began to shake. To be honest with you, I love both of my daughters very much. I am not happy with what one of my daughters is doing right now. I do not know what made her do this. We have talked about this before. She is telling lies. Samantha did not create this mystery. She did not make it up. She simply refused to let the secret stay hidden in the dark. Think of a row of dominoes. She was the first domino to fall. She was the first crack in the royal mirror. She was the first person brave enough to say out loud what the papers would show us later. When she spoke, the truth had nowhere left to hide. Once Thomas shared his memories, it opened the first door. Then a second door swung open right behind it. This second door is full of numbers that simply do not fit together. Meghan Markle's official birthday is written everywhere. You can see it in royal records. It says August 4th, 1981. It is in the palace papers. It is in books about her life. It is told to the news reporters. Everyone treats this date like it is a rock-solid fact that cannot be changed. But then as she became more and more famous, Thomas noticed something. It made him stop and think. He saw interviews where Meghan talked about her age, but what she said did not match the big moments he remembered from her childhood. She told stories about her acting, her school, and things that happened when she was a kid. But suddenly the dates seemed to shift. Once you start to feel suspicious, even just a little bit, you start to check the dates. You start to look at the timeline of her life. You start to ask yourself, does this actually make sense? What Thomas remembered in his head did not match the numbers that people all over the world were repeating. For the first time, people who knew Meghan well began whispering. They asked a quiet question. Was Meghan Markle really born in 1981? Because if she wasn't, then everything that happened later sits on a foundation that does not exist. The rise to fame in Hollywood, the marriage into the royal family, the pregnancies, all of it becomes shaky. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It became a math problem, and it was a math problem that the palace could not solve. The answer to this problem came from a place that nobody expected. It came from an old magazine. This magazine was sitting in a storage room, untouched for decades. It was from March 1997. Back in those days, teenagers used to read 17 magazine all the time. It was like how kids today scroll through TikTok. They looked at the pages for ideas, for stories, and to see a glimpse of the world they wanted to join one day. Deep inside that issue, on page 90, there is a small list printed on the paper. It is nothing fancy. It is not big or bold. It is just a list of names and ages of young women who wanted to be seen. And there, almost hidden on the page, were two words. Meghan Markle, age 21, not 15, not even close to 15. It said 21. Let's do the math. If Meghan was born in 1981, she would have been 15 years old in March of 1997. But the magazine says she was 21. This magazine was published, printed, and sold a long time ago. It was saved long before she became a duchess. That is a 6-year difference. That is not a tiny mistake or a typo. That is not a rumor. It is a number printed in ink, frozen in time. Think about what that really means. This magazine exists far away from royalty. It is far away from public relations teams or people who write biographies. It was written before anyone cared about Meghan Markle's age. Nobody had a reason to change anything back then. And yet, there it is. It is a public document that suggests her birth year is around 1975 or 1976, not 1981. When people first found that page again, it did not just make them surprised. It shook the whole story to its core. This was not a small slip-up. This points to a completely different life. In this version, Meghan wasn't a 20-something girl just starting in Hollywood. She was a woman nearly 30 years old trying to break into a business that loves young people. It changes the context of her struggles. It changes how we see her. It changes everything. And more importantly, it forces us to ask a new question. If this magazine is true, why would her official age be different? This is the moment the story turns from just being curious into a real investigation. Because once you find one piece of paper that does not match the official royal version, you cannot unsee the problem. The timeline bends, the story shifts. A mystery that is older than Meghan's Hollywood career begins to unfold. By now, the puzzle has two different pictures. They sit side by side, but they do not blend together. Version 1 is the ink version. This is the Meghan Markle that the palace approves of. In this version, she was born on August 4, 1981. That would make her 44 years old in the year 2025. This version is everywhere you look. It is repeated so many times that it feels like it must be true. It feels permanent, like it is stamped into stone. But then there is the other version. Version 2 is the pencil version. This is the version suggested by Thomas Markle's own memories. It is supported by Samantha Markle's claims, and it is supported by that stubborn page in 17 magazine. In this version, Meghan is not a millennial actress. She is a woman born around 1975 or 1976. That would make her nearly 50 years old today. Here is where the story turns into something much bigger. If one of these birth years is wrong, then which timeline is fake? Which timeline was built around a false number? Which details were added to make it look real? Which parts were taken away? And more importantly, why was the world never shown the pencil marks underneath the ink? This puzzle about her identity forces us to look at the next part of her story. This part depends almost entirely on age, medical history, and timing. We have to talk about the pregnancies, and that is where the cracks get even deeper. In royal life, age isn't just a number. It is a very important part of the story, especially when babies come into the picture. By the time Meghan and Prince Harry told the world they were having baby Archie, everyone celebrated. It looked like a fairy tale happening in real time. There were smiling photos. There were happy appearances. It was a carefully controlled story about joy and new beginnings. But here is where the timeline becomes more than just confusing. It becomes medically important. Because if Meghan was truly born in 1981, she would have been 37 years old when she was pregnant with Archie. That already places her in the geriatric pregnancy group. That is just a doctor's word for mothers over the age of 35. But if she was actually born in 1975 or 1976, then she wasn't 37. She was 42 or 43, and that changes everything. Doctors treat pregnancies very differently when the mother is over 40 years old. There is more checking, there are more tests, there are more rules that must be followed to keep both the mother and the baby safe. Which brings us to the first big red flag, the royal birth story. Prince Harry wrote a book called Spare. In that book, he described the birth, but his description does not match the medical reality for someone in Meghan's risk group. It does not matter which birth year you use, the story doesn't fit the medical rules. Harry painted a picture of a calm, candlelit hospital room. He talked about birthing balls and calm music. He described a very easy recovery. But people who know how the Portland hospital works say that this setup would never be allowed for a high-risk mother. Every medical record for a woman of Meghan's age points to high risk. Whether she is 37 or 43, she is in the high-risk group. Suddenly, the pregnancy story becomes more than just a happy announcement. It becomes a big question. If the age timeline does not match and the birth story does not match, then what does the real timeline look like? The pregnancy puzzle grows out of the age puzzle. It makes the mystery stronger. It makes it more urgent. Because now we are not just talking about what year she graduated school or what acting roles she had. We are talking about medical details. We are talking about hospital rules. We are talking about timelines that cannot be rewritten without leaving clues behind. And those clues lead us straight into the next section. This is where the story of Archie's birth begins to fall apart under its own weight. Every birth has a rhythm. There is a beginning, a middle, and a recovery time. But the timeline they gave for Archie's birth does not just move fast. It moves faster than real medicine allows. According to Harry, Meghan delivered Archie, received 2 epidurals, recovered, and was sent home from the hospital all within 2 hours. 2 hours. Now, think about that. The drive from Portland Hospital to their home at Frogmore Cottage takes about 1 hour all by itself. Sometimes it takes even longer with traffic, so that means everything else. the labor, the recovery, the doctors checking her, the paperwork, and leaving the hospital would have had to happen in just one single hour. Medically, this is impossible. After getting an epidural, a mother cannot walk immediately. Her legs are numb. She cannot feel them. Her blood pressure must be checked over and over. Her body must become stable. Doctors must make sure there are no problems. This process takes hours. Usually it takes 6 to 8 hours. Now, add another possibility. Some sources quietly suggested that Meghan showed early signs of a condition called preeclampsia during her pregnancy. This is a condition that makes monitoring even more important. If that were true, she would not have been sent home quickly. In fact, she likely would not have been sent home at all for several hours. She might have had to stay overnight. So the timeline collapses instantly. It falls apart even before we think about the travel time in the car. The story that the public was told asks us to believe something impossible. It asks us to believe that a high-risk mother with epidurals could deliver a baby, recover, and be driven home faster than most people can finish watching a single episode of a TV show. And when you put this next to the mystery about her age, the puzzle gets darker. Because if the age was changed and the birth timeline does not fit, then the question changes. It goes from "is this a mistake?" to something far more complicated. Was the story created to hide details that the public was never meant to see? By now, all the puzzle pieces are lying on the table. We have a father's quiet confession. We have a magazine page frozen in time. We have two timelines that cannot both be true. We have a birth story wrapped in calm when the medical facts point to chaos. None of these details scream at you. None of them hit you over the head. They just sit there quietly. They are stubborn. They refuse to disappear. And when you step back and look at the whole thing, the picture isn't loud. It is unsettling. It makes you feel uneasy. It begins to look like a life story that didn't simply happen. It looks like a story that was managed. It looks like it was adjusted. It looks like it was sharpened in ink, while the pencil marks underneath were carefully brushed away with an eraser. Once you see the things that do not match in her age, in her milestones, in her pregnancies, and in the timelines, you realize something very important. Fairy tales do not unravel this easily, but real stories do. Real stories have rough edges. Real stories have inconsistencies. Real stories have details that do not match, no matter how much you try to polish them. And in Meghan Markle's story, those rough edges are beginning to tear through the surface. Maybe that is why Thomas Markle finally spoke up. Maybe that is why the magazine page matters so much. Maybe that is why the birth story feels like it was shaped instead of lived. Behind the royal glow, behind the palace announcements, and behind the elegant photographs, there lies a quieter truth. It is a timeline that was rewritten. It is a narrative that was adjusted. It is a story rebuilt to fit the moment instead of the reality. The world accepted it until now. But once you tilt the page toward the light, you can see the pencil marks underneath. You can see the erased dates. You can see the strained timelines. You can see the moments that no longer fit. And now that you have seen them too, you cannot unsee them. This isn't the end of the tale. It is the moment the curtain finally moves. It reveals that behind the royal illusion stands a much deeper mystery. It is a mystery the world has only just begun to notice. And as more pieces fall into place, as more truths slip through the cracks, one question grows louder and louder. If the age, the birth, and the identity were rewritten, what else was rewritten too? The story isn't over. It is only just starting to reveal itself.